Imagine a stone-cold killer who never blinked at taking out his enemies. If he couldn't reach you, he'd come for your loved ones, no matter who they were. When you think of Jacksonville's rap scene, you probably think of the intense rivalry between Young Ace and Fulio, but lurking in the shadows was one of the most savage characters the city had ever seen. Lil Leaky rode with the notorious 1200 crew, and until his demise in 2020, he was the kind of guy who struck fear into everyone he crossed paths with. This is his wild story. Lil Leaky, whose real name was Maliki Bills, grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville's a big city with a lot of people and many different neighborhoods. Some areas of Jacksonville are nice and quiet, but other parts can be very dangerous, especially if you get mixed up in gang activities. Unfortunately, Lil Leaky grew up in one of those tough neighborhoods. He spent most of his childhood on the east side of Jacksonville, where life was hard and many people struggled to make ends meet. As a young kid, Leaky was like many others his age. He enjoyed playing outside with his friends, going to school, and spending time with his family. However, things started to change when he got older. The neighborhood where he lived was full of gangs, and it was hard to avoid getting involved with them. For many kids in Jacksonville, joining a gang seemed like a way to protect themselves and find a sense of belonging. This was the case for Leaky, who eventually became involved with a crew known as 1200. The 1200 crew, also known as S.4C or Cuckoo Gang, was a well-known gang on the east side of Jacksonville. They had a reputation for being tough and were involved in many illegal activities. Some of the most famous members of 1200 include Spinner Benz, Wappa with the Chopper, J. Breezy, and Lil Papa. These names might sound strange, but in the world of gangs and rap music, having a unique nickname is very common. Leaky's journey into gang life began slowly. At first, he was just hanging out with older boys in the neighborhood who were already part of 1200. These older boys were like role models to him, and he looked up to them. They had money, respect, and a certain level of protection that came with being part of a gang. It didn't take long for Leaky to realize that joining 1200 could offer him these same things. Leaky became more involved in gang activities in 2019 after his friend John was murdered. In August 2019, Leaky and his friend were chilling at the 1200 block of Clark Street when someone in a white van pulled up and started letting off the shots. Leaky was also injured, but he survived. Unfortunately, his homie John was pronounced dead. As Leaky became more involved with 1200, he started to build close relationships with its key members. Spinner Benz was one of the most well-known figures in the crew. He was not only involved in gang activities, but also made a name for himself in the music world. Spinner Benz was a rapper, and his songs often talked about the tough life on the streets of Jacksonville. He had a big influence on Leaky, showing him that it was possible to gain fame and respect through music while still being involved with the gang. Wappa with the Chopper was another important figure in 1200. Like Spinner Benz, he was a rapper and had a reputation for being tough. His nickname, with the Chopper, referred to a type of gun, indicating that he was someone you didn't want to mess with. Wappa was known for his loyalty to his crew and his willingness to stand up for his friends. He and Leaky became close, and Wappa often looked out for Leaky, treating him like a younger brother. J. Breezy was another key member of 1200. He was a talented rapper and had a fierce personality. J. was known for his energetic performances and his fearless attitude. He and Leaky connected over their shared experiences growing up in a rough neighborhood. J. often gave Leaky advice on how to handle the pressures of gang life and stay out of trouble with the law. Lil Papa, another member of 1200, had a slightly different relationship with Leaky. While Papa was also a rapper and part of the crew, he was more like an older brother to Leaky. Papa had his own issues with rival gangs, particularly with Fulio and his crew, KTA. Papa and Fulio used to be friends, but they had a falling out that turned into a bitter rivalry. This rivalry affected Leaky too, as he found himself getting dragged into the conflict between Papa and Fulio. Leaky's relationship with these key members of 1200 helped him gain respect within the crew. They taught him how to survive on the streets and how to handle himself in dangerous situations. Being part of 1200 meant that Leaky had to prove his loyalty and toughness, which sometimes involved violent actions and criminal activities. The crew members trusted each other and had a strong bond, almost like a family. As Leaky continued to grow up, he became more deeply involved in the gang lifestyle. He started participating in the illegal activities that 1200 was known for, such as selling drugs, carrying weapons, and engaging in violent confrontations with rival gangs. This lifestyle was dangerous and often put Leaky at risk, but it also gave him a sense of power and belonging that he didn't find anywhere else. Despite the dangers, Leakey also found a way to express himself through music, much like his friends Spinner Benz, Wappa with the Chopper, and J. Breezy. While Leakey didn't rap as much as his friends, he was often in the studio with them, supporting their music and learning about the industry. He saw how their music gave them a voice and allowed them to share their experiences and struggles with a wider audience. Leakey's involvement in the gang also brought him into direct conflict with rival gangs, particularly KTA. The beef between 1200 and KTA was intense and often led to violent encounters. Leakey had to watch his back at all times, as rival gang members were always looking for a chance to attack. This constant state of alertness and the need to protect himself and his friends became a normal part of Leakey's life. The beef between 1200 and KTA didn't start overnight. It built up over time, fueled by a series of events and personal grudges. One of the key moments that sparked this rivalry was the falling out between Lil Papa and Fulio. Papa and Fulio used to be friends and even made music together. However, their friendship turned sour due to a series of misunderstandings and disagreements. The exact reasons for their falling out are not entirely clear, but it's believed that jealousy and competition played a big role. As both Papa and Fulio started gaining popularity in the local rap scene, tensions rose. They each wanted to be the top rapper in Jacksonville, and this competition turned into animosity. The friendship that once existed between them was replaced by a bitter rivalry. The tension between Papa and Fulio didn't just affect them. It also dragged their respective crews into the conflict. As the leaders of their gangs, their beef became a matter of pride and loyalty for their friends and fellow gang members. The 1200 crew and KTA started clashing more frequently, and these confrontations often turned violent. Lil Leakey found himself deeply involved in the escalating feud. Leakey was known for his loyalty to his crew, and he wasn't one to back down from a fight. As the beef with KTA intensified, Leakey became more active in the conflicts. He wanted to show his loyalty to 1200 and protect his friends, even if it meant putting himself in danger. The beef between 1200 and KTA played out in various ways. Sometimes it involved violent encounters on the streets. Members of each gang would look for opportunities to attack their rivals, leading to fights and even shootings. These violent incidents made the neighborhoods even more dangerous and created a constant atmosphere of tension and fear. In addition to the physical confrontations, the beef also played out in the music world. Both 1200 and KTA used their rap songs to take shots at each other. They would release diss tracks, which are songs specifically made to insult and provoke their rivals. These diss tracks were filled with aggressive lyrics, boasting about their own toughness and mocking their enemies. One of the most famous diss tracks was Who I Smoke by Spinner Benz, Wappa with the Chopper, and J. Breezy. The song became viral due to its catchy tune and controversial lyrics. It mocked several deceased members of rival gangs, including KTA. The song's success on social media only added fuel to the fire, making the beef between 1200 and KTA even more intense. KTA, led by Fulio, responded with their own diss tracks. Fulio released a song called When I See You, where he mocked the deaths of several members of 1200 and other rival gangs. The back-and-forth diss tracks kept the rivalry alive and very public, with fans of both sides joining in on the arguments online. As the beef continued to escalate, it became harder for Leakey and his friends to avoid getting caught up in the violence. The constant need to watch their backs and the ever-present threat of attack made life incredibly stressful. Despite this, Leakey remained dedicated to his crew. He participated in the diss tracks, supported his friends, and stayed loyal to 1200. In the middle of all the chaos and violence between the 1200 crew and KTA, there was one incident that stood out and made things even worse. This was the attempt on Fulio's girlfriend, Booba and Baby. It was a shocking event that intensified the already burning fire of the gang war. Booba and Baby was known as Fulio's girlfriend. She was often seen with him, and they were quite close. Fulio, being the leader of KTA, was always a target for his rivals, but this time the danger extended to someone he loved. The incident involving Booba and Baby was a turning point in the beef between 1200 and KTA. On April 30th, 2020, Booba and Baby was driving her car when suddenly another car pulled up alongside hers. Without warning, someone from the other car started shooting at her. It was a terrifying moment. Booba and Baby tried to escape, but her car was hit multiple times. Luckily, she managed to survive the attack, although she was badly shaken and injured. News of the shooting spread quickly through Jacksonville. Everyone was talking about it, especially since it involved Fulio's girlfriend. People were shocked and scared. The violence between the gangs had now reached a new level, and it seemed like no one was safe. Immediately, there were rumors and accusations about who was behind the attack. Many fingers pointed at 1200, and some people specifically accused Lil Leaky of being the shooter. The allegations against Leaky were serious. He was known for his loyalty to his crew and his willingness to fight, but this was something different. Attacking someone's girlfriend was seen as crossing a line, even in the world of gang conflicts. Leaky denied being involved in the shooting, but the accusations continued to swirl around him. For many people, it was hard to know what to believe. The gang world was full of secrets, and it was difficult to find out the truth. However, whether Leaky was involved or not, the incident had a huge impact on the gang war. Fulio was furious when he heard about the attack on Bouban Baby. He was already deeply involved in the beef with 1200, but now it had become even more personal. Fulio felt like his enemies had targeted him in the most hurtful way possible by going after someone he cared about. He vowed to get revenge for what had happened to Bouban Baby. The attempt on Fulio's girlfriend led to a wave of retaliation. KTA members were more aggressive than ever, looking for any opportunity to strike back at 1200. The streets of Jacksonville became even more dangerous as both sides sought revenge. Every encounter was filled with tension, and it seemed like violence could erupt at any moment. The next incident shocked the entire Jacksonville. Petey was a well-known rapper of the 1200 crew who was gunned down on May 3, 2020, in broad daylight while walking with friends. The news spread quickly through Jacksonville, sparking outrage and fear among gangs. According to witnesses, Petey was ambushed by a group of masked men who opened fire without warning. The shooters fled the scene before anyone could react, leaving Petey lying on the ground, fatally wounded. His friends were also injured, but Petey couldn't survive and died due to injuries. According to the police, over 30 shots were fired at the scene. It was a brutal and senseless act of violence that sent shockwaves through the community. Immediately, rumors began to swirl about who was behind Petey's murder. Many people pointed fingers at KTA, believing that they were responsible for the attack as part of their beef with 1200. The tension between the two gangs reached new heights as both sides prepared for retaliation. Leaky, being a prominent member of the 1200 crew, was also dragged into the speculation. Some people believed that he had ordered the hit on Petey in revenge for past conflicts between the gangs. However, there was no solid evidence linking Leaky to the murder, and he denied any involvement. The death of Petey had serious consequences for both gangs. For 1200, it was a devastating loss of a respected member and a close friend. They mourned Petey's death while also planning their next move against KTA. Retaliation was inevitable, and the streets of Jacksonville became even more dangerous as violence escalated. KTA, on the other hand, faced increased investigation and pressure from law enforcement. The murder of Petey brought renewed attention to the gang war, and police were determined to bring those responsible to justice. Raids and arrests followed as authorities tried to quell the violence and restore order to the community. After the brutal murder of Petey, Jump Out Squeeze, who was a member of KTA and a known rival of the 1200 crew, met a tragic end in a shooting incident at an Amazon warehouse in Florida, where he was there to apply for a job. His death was another chapter in the story of revenge and retaliation that defined the Jacksonville gang wars. The news of Jump Out Squeeze's death spread quickly through social media and the streets. According to reports, he was shot multiple times and couldn't survive. The motive behind the shooting was unclear, but many suspected it was linked to the escalating conflict between KTA and 1200. Following Jump Out Squeeze's death, tensions between the gangs reached the boiling point. Both sides blamed each other for the violence, and retaliatory attacks became more frequent. Shootings, robberies, and other crimes rocked the neighborhoods where the gangs operated, leaving residents terrified and desperate for peace. In response to Jump Out Squeeze's death, KTA released a diss track titled Op Shit, which directly referenced their rivals in 1200. The song was filled with aggressive lyrics and threats, further escalating the animosity between the gangs. It quickly gained popularity among their supporters and fueled the fire of the ongoing feud. Meanwhile, Leaky and his crew in 1200 faced increased investigation and suspicion following the release of Op Shit. Some people speculated that Leaky was involved in Jump Out Squeeze's death as retaliation for past conflicts between the gangs. However, Leaky maintained his innocence and insisted that he had nothing to do with the shooting. The shooting at the Amazon warehouse added to the chaos surrounding Jump Out Squeeze's death. Reports indicated that a group of gunmen opened fire outside the warehouse, targeting individuals they believed were associated with KTA. The incident left several people injured and further heightened fears of retaliation. Speculation about Leakey's involvement in the shooting at the Amazon warehouse continued to swirl despite his denials. The police launched an investigation into the incident, hoping to uncover the truth and bring those responsible to justice. Lil Leakey's life came to a tragic end on September 2nd, 2020. It was around 1:30 a.m. when he was driving a car at an intersection of Atlantic Boulevard and Monument Road. Another car pulled up beside him and opened fire. Leakey's car was hit with multiple bullets, and he was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries. Despite efforts to save him, he passed away. It was widely believed that an A-Block, 6-Block member named Kurt was allegedly involved in Leakey's death. Kurt was Petey's brother, and many people think he killed Leakey as an act of revenge. However, this has never been officially confirmed. Leakey's sister made a TikTok video where she talked about the incident. She said that people from Fulio's side were involved in Leakey's death. Leakey's death sent shockwaves through both the 1200 crew and their rivals. His friends and fellow gang members were devastated by the loss of someone they considered a brother. The pain of losing Leakey fueled their anger, and they vowed to seek revenge, intensifying the already volatile situation. On the other side, KTA members knew that Leakey's death would provoke a strong response. Although they didn't publicly celebrate, there was an understanding that the cycle of violence would likely continue. Leakey's death had a significant impact on the rap scene in Jacksonville. Both the 1200 crew and KTA had members who were involved in making music, and the long feud often spilled over into their lyrics. Diss tracks and music videos became a way for the rival gangs to communicate threats and insults, further fueling the violence. The murder of Leakey inspired a series of retaliatory diss tracks from both sides. These songs not only reflected real-life violence, but also perpetuated it by glorifying the gang violence and promoting the idea of vengeance. Young fans of the music were exposed to a dangerous narrative that celebrated gang affiliations and violent retribution. That's all for today's video. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and show your love and support by subscribing.